Jim, you know how long it's been since I've seen you? I haven't seen you in forever. How are
Uh,
you?
I'm good. How are you? I,
Old and senile and about to lose my mind, but other than that, I'm okay.
well, that's par for the course for everybody, isn't it? And
You're still
I'm
a
just,
baby. You're still a baby. You got a long way to go before you get where I am.
I'm hitting the big 5-0 in a couple of months, so
Exactly, a
it's
baby.
all over then.
Still a baby. You know, your body
Yeah.
might be talking to you a little bit, but for the most part, you got a long way to go. Thank you
Yeah.
so
Well,
much for
I'm
agreeing
in no
to
hurry.
exactly. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me. Um, I'm going to ask you two questions and we'll kind of go from there and see where we end up. If there's something that we come across that you're uncomfortable talking about, let's just change the subject, okay?
Okay, sure. Sounds
So the
good.
first question is please tell us your name. And the second question is please share anything about you that will help us get to know you a little bit better.
So my name's Jim Daigle. Something about me. I'm currently the IT director of IT for the Pratt School of Engineering at Duke University. I've been there coming up on 14 years now, I think.
Wow.
But I've been in IT, gosh, 24, 25 years now. It's been a while. Um, I'm married 27 years now, two kids. I got a 21-year-old in college, although he's at home, and I got a 24-year-old who had gone to art school but now works at Starbucks. I'm still living at home. So a dog, a cat.
Important people, all the important people.
Yes, all the important things in my life. So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So I want to ask you a question about what's going on around us. I want to talk about COVID first, and then talk about these protests with the killing of black and brown people.
Yes.
So, what are your thoughts about what's happening with COVID and how it's affecting the entire world, but specifically little communities that are seeing flares and things like that? Have you given much thought to this disease and how it may impact you or your family?
Yeah, I mean, I think like everybody else, I'm frustrated. But to be honest, it's one of those, when it first started, my wife and I had kind of different perspectives on it.
Mm-hmm.
She was taking it seriously. I was more in that of, oh, well, it doesn't sound like it's too bad.
Right.
Whatever. I get sick, but for me, I'm one that I don't get sick a lot. I mean, when I do, I get sick for, at least a good long week.
Yeah.
But then after that, I'm fine. So I was like, it's not that big of a deal. We'll see. It'll blow over like the SARS and all the other ones. And she was real focused on it. But as it kind of went along, it became a little bit more concerning, and it just, having younger kids, again, at the time, I wasn't too concerned with it. But as this whole thing has developed and evolved, you become a little bit more concerned, going, well, gosh, if my kids get it and they don't have any symptoms and they bring it home, we're getting older. Or even now, what was it? Florida recently had, I think their average age was like 37, something like that.
Yep.
So thinking, well, now my kids could be in trouble. Does my son go back to college in the fall? Is that the safe, smart thing to do or not? So it's become a lot more concerning. I've completely switched. I'm no longer, that's not a big deal. It's a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, it's different for different communities.
Yeah.
I work with Latondra in my office. She's African American. She's got diabetes. We have a birthday like just a few weeks apart, so we're the same age.
Mm-hmm.
And so looking at her position with diabetes, it's that's a big deal for her. So she won't even let people, other neighborhood kids come over and play with her kids.
Right.
And which I completely agree with. So then, then there's all the issues with healthcare and access to what you need there. And, you see the reports and you start to think, well, why is it hitting some of these other communities? And obviously it's that economic issue of who has access to what healthcare. I mean, we're at Duke. We have, granted, we pay quite a bit for it, but we have access to great medical care and insurance. And, I think what I just said there, saying we pay for it, is a big thing.
Right.
We get paid, fairly well, working at Duke. So we have the access to resources that pay for the
Right.
insurance that we have. And a lot of people don't have that.
Right.
I look at my own daughter. She works at Starbucks. She doesn't work enough hours to get any medical insurance through then. And, I look at that going, she's got what, actually she'll be 25 this fall. So only another year before she needs to find a way to get insurance, because I won't be able to keep her on my insurance any longer.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So So money is a big thing, and and companies just don't want to offer these benefits anymore because it's all about the company. It's all about the brand. We don't care about the people who really get us here and get us to where we need to go. It's about the brand, and that's the most important thing. Absolutely. Even though they say it's all about the people, it's not.
Yeah. It's not really not. And to me, looking at every aspect of what we're talking about now, my husband is a school teacher. And so they're talking about bringing students back to school. And we're not talking about college age students who have a modicum of reason, but we're talking about little kids who, this is going to be a whole nother thing, because the neighborhood I live in, I'm surrounded by kids. I think the average age is probably 10 or 11, and they do not social distance. They are playing and doing all of the things that they do. And so now you're talking about bringing them into the school system and saying, okay, now you got to stay away from somebody you haven't seen in forever. You can't hug and you can't, I think that's just, I think we're just playing with life. We're just jeopardizing people and the teachers and everybody's there. And even our institution, I recognize that it is important. Some part of the college experience is necessary to be in person, right? So you can talk and, share memories, because normally for most people, they make their best friends when they're in college, and things like that. But I just don't know whether we're really contemplating what could possibly happen, because of our age and, various things like that.
And I think that there's a kind of a key piece there is that, they use that, Duke keeps saying that about the college experience. And I think, and even my son's college, they're like, oh, it's important to be here. Well, it is, but at the same time, this is 1 year out of that. If this is your first year, you have that option to take a gap year. If it's your senior year, is that frustrating? Yeah, but you've had the experience.
Right.
If you're a junior, you're going to have the experience again. You just have to wait a year.
Yep.
So you have that option. But then when we start to talk about, grade school and high school, that's a little tougher, because that starts to get back to that whole socioeconomic issue of, and I think one of the most difficult things with this whole COVID thing is that, you and I, we can work remotely and work from home and still earn a paycheck. But there's a lot of people that can't do that. And they need to go to work.
Right.
Unless the whole financial institution that we have comes to a halt and says, you know what, no one has to pay for their rent or their health care, and it's not going to accumulate. And once this is all over, you just start like nothing happened. Unless they do something like that, people need to have jobs. They need to send their kids off to school because they can't afford daycare and they can't be home if they're going to be at work. So that's one of the most complicated and frustrating things, because you'll sit there and go, stay home. But it's easy for me to say that because I can. And there's so many people I can't. And so and unfortunately, we don't have the leadership in this country to kind of help guide that and help people understand this and come up with solutions for people. So,
right. 127,000 people have died in the United States from this disease.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at flu, on average, somewhere between 25 and 45,000 people die from the flu each year, but this disease seems to have a different mindset at how it's attacking people, and so you're right about the socioeconomics, but also young people who feel invincible. Why do I need to wear a mask? Because I'm going to live forever. So, there are all those kinds of things. So I do think that's a really pretty powerful thing that we're having to face. And working in higher education is even different because, we see these kids, we have relationships with these kids, we have relationships with the faculty, and so to think that we could put them in harm's way, it's just frightening to me, to think about that, so there's that. Okay, so the other half of my question is so Mr. Floyd was killed about a month ago now. Mm-hmm. By a law enforcement officer who put his knee on his neck and his hand in his pocket.
Mhm.
Have you seen the video?
Oh yeah, I have seen the video.
What came to mind to you?
Shock. Well, I guess it's a combination of shock and uh, what's the word? It's um, I mean, obviously I was shocked, but then at the same time not shocked. It's that conflict there, because you're like, you know what? We've seen this before. This isn't. It's happened too many times. So yeah, you see it and you're just shocked. Yeah, it's disgusting. I mean, yeah, sad. I mean, there's a lot of emotions there, and it's just it's definitely hard to watch. That's for sure. But and I will say, there was, and because we're living in interesting times, uh, maybe interesting is not the right word, but the incident in the park, and I forget the woman's name, but the one that called 911, that to me,
With the dog,
with the dog,
right?
I have to say that that was so probably the most disturbing, and I know that that sounds bad because George lost his life, but the way that her voice changed, when she was talking and she's, oh, I'm going to call, and oh, someone's threatening my life, and then I mean, that was an Academy Award performance, and it was just, oh my God, I can't believe I'm seeing this. That was just mind-boggling. So that was shocking and mind-boggling at the same time, to think that that's what somebody would do when someone's just saying, hey, you've got to have your dog on a leash. It's so, shocking. Yeah.
So as a Black woman, I'm 61 years old. I've been at Duke 12 years now. And I grew up in the rural South. So where the N word was used so commonly, we didn't think it was offensive because it used so much, or grown Black men were called boy, and things like that. And so here we are in 2020, and things look a little different. It's a little bit better America than 1619. But when you think about the Native Americans, you think about the Chinese and Asian and Japanese Americans, all these people who have suffered at the hands of a group that has literally come to America, took over the entire country, and said, here are the rules in which you must live by in order for us to let you exist.
Mm-hmm.
For as a Black person, that's just so hard to even fathom that people are shocked. How can you be shocked? I mean, if you went through any kind of school, you heard a history of slavery. You knew what Jim Crow was. You know what Reconstruction is. You know what white supremacy and the Ku Klux Klan and all these other groups are. Mm-hmm. So how can we be shocked that Black and brown people are killed, paid less, promoted less? If you look around your building, I tell you, at least in my building, my house cleaning staff is all Black men and Black women. When you go get something to eat on the campus, Black man, Black woman, everywhere. So. Mm-hmm. How can you be shocked? How can I be shocked when this is what I see every single day? When we look what we do for a living, I mean, it's still predominantly white male. And so, in some cases I'm an anomaly, in some cases I'm not. I'm always shocked when Wayne says we need to extend the staff. And what I write at the end of my notes, I take all the notes, I count how many Black or brown people there are in that room. And I want to know, how is that possible in 2020? Yeah. So that leads me to my next question. What is white privilege, white supremacy, white power, and white fragility? I've heard all of those things from people in the last month or so. And I assume everybody approaches it from a different lens. I'm assuming, I don't know that, but what are your thoughts about what those four things are?
That's a great question. I think the easy there is white privilege. I mean, I'm going to say, realistically, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have known what white privilege was. I would have made an argument of, well, I've worked to get to where I'm at. I'm not from a rich family. But that certainly is different now. I think I understand white privilege a little bit more. And I think part of that is because just of my family dynamics. I'm in a mixed race relationship. My kids are mixed race. And, the fact that I can walk around and drive my car and not be concerned about being pulled over. I've been pulled over. And when I say I've been pulled over, I've been in the 14 years I've been in North Carolina, I've been pulled over once. And it was easy for me to say, I'm being pulled over. And, you know, the cop pulled me over and he's like, you know why I pulled you over? Yeah, I was speeding.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It was no big deal. I was upset I was getting a ticket, but that was it. There was no fear for my life. There was no fear that I'd be pulled out of the car or anything. I know I can walk down the street in my neighborhood at night and not be questioned. So, you know, that's part of that white privilege. But then I look at my kids and I'm going, you know, they're mixed race. Their skin is darker. They have dark hair. They have dark eyes. I'm going, and it's, you know, one of those, do they have to worry? And sometimes I look at that and go, have I failed as a father because I was blind to that? You know, I'd have times in my past that my wife would say, did you see those people looking at us? I'm like, no one's looking at us. That didn't happen. Or she'll say she was at a store and someone scoffed at her. And I'm like, no, that didn't happen. And then I'd start to see it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, now am I supposed to, you know, and luckily when I'd see some of the stuff and I'd say stuff, it was before people had, you know, smartphones. So I could get away with things and not end up on Facebook. But it's something you start to see and you go, gosh, have I been a bad father that I haven't prepared my kids for this world? I've treated them with that white privilege of go outside. What's anyone going to do? You don't like something? Just, you know, I probably made the wrong decisions there. So yeah, so white privilege, I think I have a better understanding of it. I'm not going to say I'm an expert in it, but I certainly acknowledge that it's something that I've benefited from.
Yeah.
You know, white supremacy, white power, those to me are just they're just racism. They're people that are they're afraid, and they want to hold on to stuff. You know, we had the conversation yesterday at the staff town hall with the dean yesterday, and they were talking about reviewing the diversity at Pratt. You know, they were talking about all the people that are at level 14 and above and the lack of diversity there. And they're saying, yeah, we're going to talk about this. And I don't look at that and go, oh, well, now I'm going to lose my job out to someone else. Or no, it's about finding the best person for the job. And so if I'm someone that cares about white power or white supremacy, I would speak up against that, you know, saying, no, I'm the right person. And that's not how I feel, but I could see that would fall into that category. So, yeah.
I will say this. I'm almost 100% certain your wife has had that chat with her children. Because, you know, just like you said, you could walk around in your neighborhood and nobody's even going to blink. You know, you belong there. You know, yep. You can go into the store and nobody's going to follow you because right. you're not in that category of people that are a threat or labeled violent or angry or whatever it is. So you live in a different world. But if your children don't look like you, I can promise you, until we get to a place where equality and being humane means something, your children are in danger. You know, so I have a 21-year-old son and I have a 41-year-old daughter. My son goes to college in Greensboro. He's a senior, thankfully. And when Trayvon Martin was killed, it changed my whole thought process because I had not given that much thought. We live in majority of people in my neighborhood are white. There are about 10 or 12 Black families in my neighborhood, but for the most part, you know, it's predominantly white. We've lived here. We have great relationships with our neighbors and all of that kind of good stuff. But when Trayvon Martin was killed, my son was maybe 14 or 15. I don't remember how old he was. I had that first conversation with him. Because he learned to drive, he you know, getting the learning permit and driving at school. And I told him, I said, you know, you are a Black man and you are vulnerable. And of course he gave me a lot of pushback. Mom, nothing's going to happen to me. I'm giving my license. I'm put my hands on the wheel. I'm going to do all these things. And I said, that may not save your life, even if you do all of those things. So Black mothers and fathers and mixed race children's mothers and fathers have these conversations all the time to save their children's lives. Although we can watch Mr. Floyd die or Ahmaud Arbery and all these people die, that's not happening to us. That's not happening to us. That can't happen to us, but it can. It really can, because you know, in the last 6 or 7 months, the number of Black men who've been killed running away from the police, not running at them, but running away from them, and to be shot in the back. It's just a terrifying thing to think about. So, I'm sure your wife and you will probably too start having those conversations with your kids,
Oh
especially
yeah,
if you ever get out of COVID. But
yeah.
because there are a lot of people who they're going to be a threat to them. They're going to be uncomfortable with that, because
Well,
of that white privilege thing.
I mean, just look at the news on Elijah. I forget his last name.
Yeah, yeah,
But I mean, the McClain. My wife just held it out. I mean, that's just as disturbing. I mean, that's even one of those where he wasn't even in a situation where he potentially passed a bad bill or did something wrong. He was just going home.
yeah,
And obviously someone looked at that and go, oh, there's a black person with a mask on and there's no COVID. So that's pretty sketchy.
yeah,
And you look at that going, yeah, this is just an innocent young kid just minding his own business. And then the cops come and they don't handle the situation properly. And it wasn't even the cops. It's also the EMT or the fireman that came and gave him the shot of the.
yeah,
I mean, come on, what is going? I mean, yeah, and again for me, because I'm a white person, I'm just looking at this going, how could this happen when it's happening all the time? And it's frustrating because that's something that happened 8 months ago, and we're just now hearing about it. That is just that's so sad for that family. That they had to wait this long for justice to be discussed.
yeah, absolutely. Last night, my last Zoom diversity chat was with the mayor, Steve Schul, who's a Duke grad. Wonderful, wonderful man. Just a true human being. And what we talked about was training, right? So as IT people, we're constantly reaffirming our skills. We're refreshing our skills. We're going to conferences. We're taking courses. We're doing whatever we can to stay on the curve of how IT is evolving. I mean, but for police officers, they go through this academy, they come out, they practice shooting and all this other stuff. And then here you go. And so, he talked a little bit last night about training, mental health. And then what he said was really so profound to me. He said, but still, even with all that, there's still some bad apples. No amount of training in the world is going to help them.
Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting for the mayor to say, which is really, really what we think too, and I think that the part for me that's really most disturbing is I work in a field where majority of my colleagues are white male, and they have no idea what it's like for me to be in IT. I don't know if you had gone to ITSO has sponsored an event maybe 2 or 3 years ago where the CSIO from American University came and talked to us about security at American. And she introduced a new term to us, and the term was heat. Like, okay, I ain't never seen that in my dictionary. I started Googling it. Heat, what is that? And she said, it is what it is when you're in a room with mostly white males, and you, as a woman, speak up and say, I think this is an idea we should try or consider, and you hear crickets. But then one of your white colleagues rephrases it, maybe just change an article or add some little bit, and all of a sudden, oh my God, that's the greatest idea I've ever heard in my life. We should do that right away, And she said that's heat, because it's not a thing until a man, specifically a white man, has said yes, we should do that.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
I was really, shocked by that. And this is a very powerful woman. She runs the security for a large university, and not just, so that she is experiencing that. She's a white woman, so she's experiencing that. So if you can imagine what I experienced as a black woman, heat isn't even the word. It's like, am I invisible? Can you hear me? Am I talking? So it's just one of those things where being black and brown has its challenges that go beyond just, law enforcement killing or whatever. Am I paid equitably? No.
Yep.
Am I promoted? No. And I'll tell you a Pratt story. So I have a class I want to teach, and it's gender, poverty, and race through the lens of current and emerging technologies.
Mm-hmm.
I've sent that course to almost every school at Duke, so, even Trinity, I've sent it everywhere. And everybody says, this is a great course. We need it. Mm-hmm. And after a while, you'll get people say, well, we can't afford it, or we don't know how many people will enroll, or we don't know whatever it is. And I always ask, well, how do you know how many people are going to enroll in any given class that's not an elective? How do you know? And I get some mixed answers, some rolled eyes, or either no response whatsoever. And those kinds of experiences is like what it is to be black. Because I bet you all the money in the world, if you would have developed that course, it would have been on the books. you'd have had like 5,000 students trying to take that course. But
Yeah.
me, that's not the case. And so, we have socioeconomic issues, education issues. We have so many issues in our country that are not easily solvable, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
one of the things I really believe, why would a person with white privilege want to share his or her power? Why? What's in it for them? Nothing. So although we're protesting and we're doing all these things, I think it's a long road to equality and humanity. You can look at our university. I mean, our university, in terms of students and faculty and administrators, it speaks to what our overall society is, white and male, females here and there, but there's that. So I think that when I talk to people like you, I'm very interested in hearing what you think about how we got where we are now. I mean, what do you think was the thing that triggered us to become this kind of population? Blacks against whites, blacks against blacks, whites against whites. How did we get here?
Yeah, that's a deep question, a complicated question. I mean, I think gosh, you could go back as far as just saying it's something that's kind of I'm blanking on the word. Your mind's the first thing to go.
Welcome to old age.
Yeah. What is it? Anthropologically speaking, you could look at it and say that, you go back, it's in and I don't use this lightly, but saying it's in your DNA of, you go back to tribes and you have your little village, and here comes an outsider that doesn't look like you. Your first line of defense is that you kind of all clump together. And what is that? You're cautious, and it's a defense mechanism. And so fear. And I think that that's kind of been there throughout. And then people, you get to that point of, as society grew and you had these, you go through Europe with the monarchy and the haves and the have-nots. It was certainly something there where, well, I'm privileged, I'm the chosen one. And if you grow up, I've actually had this conversation with my kids about privilege. So, at my last job, I worked for semiconductors, and I was traveling all over the world for work. And of course, the more you travel, the more perks you get.
Right.
You start getting bumped up for upgrades. You start staying in these really nice hotels that you have to have a key card to even get on the elevator. And that starts to get to your head. It goes to your head. It gets big, and you start thinking, "Yeah, this is great." And you show up, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm Daigle. I should be on the list." And oh yes, Mr. Daigle. And they treat you differently. Well, then when you leave that job, and you run out of all your points for the hotel stuff and the airline miles, and then you go on vacation, and you're going, "I have to stay at the Hotel 8? That's all that's in my budget? Do they not know who I am? I deserve more than this." So it takes time for you to kind of get off of that pedestal that you put yourself on.
Yeah.
And so I think that the people for so long with family money that people have brought over, they get that in their head and they're going, "This is who I am. I have all this stuff. I don't care how I got it. I want it. And I don't want to have to go back to the Motel 8. So how do you tell people that if you explain to them, it's kind of like the whole taxing of the rich and, and everything. Wait a minute, I worked for this. I did everything for this. I'm not saying you didn't work for this, but you're insinuating I haven't worked to get to where I'm at.
Right.
You've had to step up. You've had more opportunities, whether it's family money or whatever. Right. So I think it's hard for people to kind of walk away from that lavish lifestyle. And it doesn't help that that's what we see in entertainment, that, you watch Hollywood movies or TV shows. I mean, sitcoms forever. It's always been, here's some unemployed cook living in a $2,000 a month apartment in New York City. That's not real life, but people go, "Oh, that's what I want."
Yeah.
You have the Kardashians and all the money they have and the lifestyle, and people are like, "That's what I want."
Right.
And once people have that, they don't want to give it up. And they have that fear that someone's coming to take it. Yeah. And that's what politicians do. They instill that fear. They prey on that fear. Yeah. "Oh, they're coming for your guns." No, they're not. they want to put controls in. Oh, they're coming for your money. Well, I live in a society. I should be contributing somehow.
Yeah.
So, so even the leaders in our country are pushing that fear on you.
Absolutely.
If you don't do that, oh, the H-1B ones, they're taking your jobs.
Yeah.
Is that really what's happening? So it's, when they talk about the immigrants, it's always about, they'll take that, talk about the bad apples. Oh, one immigrant came in and raped someone. They're all bad.
Yeah, all bad.
Really? Are you kidding me? So that it's, I think that's how we've kind of got here. It's just that that's how society's, and people have accepted that throughout the generations. It's just, well, that's what I have. This is my place. I was born into this. They have that in India, some of the religions. It's, if you're born into that religion, there is no way for you to get ahead. You're in it, and that's it.
Yep.
If you weren't born in the privilege, there's no way out.
Yep.
That's accept your fate.
Yep.
And so, I do think there's some anthropological kind of history there, or anchor there, or foundation that started this. But as humans go, as we build societies and do everything, people get stuff, don't want to let go.
Yeah, I think your point about tribes is dead on. If you're interested, I'll send you this article. There was an article that's written about 2014 or something about the DNA of race, and it says, like, for slaves, it's been coded. PTSD has been encoded in our DNA and our gene genetics, and white people have also had coding on their DNA and their genetics because of what they've done. And so, like, when you were talking about your coworker with diabetes, like, why is it that Black people have a higher instance of diabetes or high blood pressure or whatever it is? It's something that's tying back to something historical, whatever that is historical. It's a great read article, because when I first read it, I was like, wow, I got PTSD and nobody told me. So I was like, wow, it's pretty interesting here. But I think your other points are very valuable too. And but I will add this one little piece to it. If it were not for white people, Black people would still be enslaved. So some people had some reasonableness to say, this is wrong and we need to do something about it. And I don't know if you know this about me, but I read everything that's ever been written about Abraham Lincoln. I have almost every book ever been written about him. And I always come back conflicted. Was he pro-union or was he anti-slavery? Which one of those was he? And, and as you read it, everybody's giving their own perspective about it. You get stuck right there. And so if you see that he was pro-union, he probably wouldn't have been killed. But because people saw him as pro-slavery, his life became tenuous, because you're going to disrupt my economic system. I've got this free labor. I can treat them anywhere that I want to. And something that I was telling someone the other day that really shined a light on it for me was when Mexicans started coming into the border under this current White House administration, how they were separating children from their parents and that's reminiscent of slavery, because children were sold out from under their parents, and all this. So it's a very interesting thing. And I agree with you completely. I don't think in my lifetime, I'm 61, I'll be 62 in November. I mean, I do not believe this is going to change in my lifetime. I think people are going to, start talking about it a little more and thinking about it a little more, but change, no, Yeah,
I mean, I and forgive me if this isn't completely tied to that, but think about a company, business. What's the biggest expense that they have? It's human labor.
Yeah.
And what the trending with companies have always been, how do we outsource this to someone cheaper?
Yeah.
How do we automate it so we don't have to pay somebody? Companies want free labor. It's that's what it comes down to. I want all the benefit of the people buying my product, but I don't want to have to give anything to anybody else that's worked for me. So in a sense, there's something in that DNA and that says, and if this is left over from slavery, or if this goes back further where it's, hey, I just want this stuff for free. I don't want anybody else to get any credit for this, and I want all the money. So, I think there is something to that we're always, as a race, human race, we're trying to find ways to do stuff so we can maximize our profits and not bring everybody else along for the ride. And I think that until we get through that, I think that's it's going to be hard for change to happen at a societal level.
Yep. and I think, going back to what you said about the tribes, if you think about Native Americans, so when the people left England coming to escape religious persecution or whatever it was they were facing, they came and they found these brown people here who were not practicing the kind of religion they did, that was living off the land, kind of, I don't know what the right word is, what they thought of them, but well, at first they were, friendly, they needed the Native Americans to help them navigate the planet. But then, at some point they get to this place where, yeah, we don't want them anymore, so let's get rid of them. And so you have the Trail of Tears and all that stuff, the internment camps for Asian people, all of these things, even the Holocaust, which happened in Europe. But I mean, even those kinds of things, it's like, it seems like in our society, somebody's always got to be better than somebody else. You always got to have more, And so, women usually have these little jokes about boys with most toys. I think there's something about that is so encoded in our society that I cannot be your equal. I cannot be your pair because I something wrong with me. I'm too dark, or I'm too opinionated, or something another. And ESPN is doing this 30 for 30, and they did one on Bruce Lee. And I'm gonna tell you something, you should watch it if you have not. It's amazing. It's called Be Water. And it looks at his life. He's born in San Francisco, which I did not know that, but he's born in San Francisco, and look at his life. And so when he was Kato to the Green Hornet, they didn't want him to have speaking parts or whatever. So they canceled the show because he was Chinese American, so there's that, and here's this man who, from everything I can read about him, he was absolutely a simply amazing human being. He did not see race in the way that most people do. Even, Asian people see race, between black and brown and white and whatever it is. He did not. And we still were not happy until we could, minimize him as much as we possibly could, So, I think that in my mind, like, one of these days, I don't think in my lifetime, maybe not even in your kid's lifetime, there will be a time when people are human beings and not black and white and Chinese and Japanese and whatever label we put on them, these constructs that make us feel better about ourselves. It's not going to happen. And the mayor said something yesterday about reparations. What you said earlier about wanting to give up, the chances of black people getting reparations is almost the chance of us crossing the Red Sea on foot. It's just not likely going to happen because no one's going to want to give that money up.
No. Well, I mean, look at the reparations for the Native Americans that had changed over the years. Oh, we're going to give you this. Oh, wait, there's something good there. Never mind, we're going to take that back. Yeah. We would do that. But I would say the one glimmer of hope, I think if you look back at all those things, the Holocaust and, the Europeans taking over America and taking away from the Native Americans, you can always find stories of good people that tried to fight against the Nazis and to help the Jewish people. The Europeans that did come to America and worked with and lived with the Native Americans, and they found common ground, and things worked well together. And I think at some point that level of humanity hopefully is gonna shine through and overtake the bad. It has to. Otherwise, what's the point? Yeah. But again, I agree, not in our lifetime.
Yeah, not in our lifetime. And I think when even if you're not, I'm not religious. I'm spiritual, but I'm not religion. I believe in God. I believe in the universe, but I don't believe in organized religion. And one of the things that I often struggle with is, like, you can read that Bible and interpret it so many ways to make it advantageous for you or disadvantageous for someone else. And I think, like, it's been said like a gazillion times, the most segregated day of the week is Sunday. Like, we all go off to our own churches with our own people, but I hope that our children, because both of my children, my daughter is 41 and my son is 21, neither one of them, their network is so diverse that, it's unexplainable, because, like, my son when he was much younger, he played AAU basketball, and we'd have, 10, 15 kids here, the house smelled like a damn, the house caught on fire and it molded or something. It's just absolutely stink as possible. but they slept together on the floor. You know, they played together, they ate together, they interacted with each other. Girls would come over, and I'm like, how did she stand the smell of that? But whatever, you know, and they would interact with each other. Um, and I do not believe in color blindness, but whatever it is, there's some portion of this universe that doesn't see race the way we old people do, where my generation does. Probably you're not a baby boomer, but
Nope.
but you know, but those people that are behind me, and even people that are a little bit in front of me, maybe they don't see it that way. Maybe that's what it is, because if you don't teach your children racism, they do not learn it naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think part of that is it's that between child and adulthood that comes back to that what do you have? You know, when you're young and a kid, you don't have a job. Everything's just given to you. You know, food is there for you for the most part. I mean, I'm generalizing here, but your parents are providing for you. They don't understand the hardships that you go through of trying to get a job and keeping a job and how hard you have to work and the people you have to put up with. But once they start to get jobs and get money and say, oh, I can buy this, once they realize what a Gucci handbag is versus, you know, something from TJ Maxx, that's when it starts the have versus, oh, wait, I want those shiny objects.
Right.
I think that's when that, and it all of a sudden becomes a competition. That's where it starts to come into play. There's something with that adulthood when you have responsibilities kick in. That's where people start to see color.
Yeah.
As sad as it is.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Although I would say, you know, I know some pretty young kids that use the N word.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
There is.
because
Don't get me wrong. It certainly does start at home. You know, and that's you know, I'm from Maine, and I think it was just I read an article not too long ago. Maine and West Virginia, I think, are the two whitest states in the country. And you know. And honestly, I grew up with my mother. My mother's a racist. She's passed away now, but she was a racist. And the stuff that came out of her mouth was just mind-boggling. And, you know, my brothers and I have talked about this. We're like, it's amazing that we didn't grow up as racist.
Right.
And I think part of that is it was just my mother. My uncle, not that way. You know, certainly you know, everyone, you know, my mother's friends, not that way. But she was. Some of her friends were. But at the same time, we were kind of raised by Hollywood. You know, my mother was the type of, oh, we have cable now. Go to your room and leave me alone.
Right.
So we went in our room and watched Hollywood movies. And I think that was, there certainly was a liberal spin to how, you know, movies were played back then and how we grew up. That's what kind of, luckily, I think for us, that's what kind of guided us to how we were going to have our opinions and views on life. It was, so thanks to Hollywood, I guess.
That's an amazing analogy, because I will say, you know, to me, looking at that Hollywood, every year we watch the 10 Commandments, right? You know, we without fail. And so it shows the Egyptians and the Jews, right? And so every actor in that movie, with the exception of about maybe 10, are white. You know, they got face paint or something on them, you know, to make them look a little bit ethnic, but they're white. And when I think about things like that, you know, it's like, I can't think of the Black woman right now who won the Oscar for her role in the Great White movie. I can't think of it right now. But anyway, that's another, my old age showing up. But I think that, you know, the pictures that the media paints for us of what society should look like,
yes,
is never to see Black or brown people as good, right? Because, I mean, even if you take this COVID thing here, you know, the person that is in charge of the free world says it's the China virus. Mm-hmm. What the hell is that? You know, I mean, like, how can you frame your mouth to say that? You know, I mean, maybe it did originate in China, but is it the China virus? Really? Yeah. So I don't know. It's just really different and hard to kind of process.
Yeah. Well, because if you look at it, you know, from if you start saying, oh, it's a China virus, well, if you look at where the initial reports are saying that comes from, you know, from wet markets in lower class neighborhoods. So yeah, if you're going to sit there and say it's the China virus, it's because of these poor people let it out.
Yeah.
They created it. Yeah. Well, now you're being, you know, in a sense that becomes racist.
Absolutely.
All the stuff they throw out. And again, as the leader of the country,
right,
you shouldn't be saying that. Actually, any leaders not be saying
Should not be saying that. Absolutely. We have about 5 minutes. I'm going to leave it to you for anything you wish to discuss or share with us.
Well, that's no pressure there. Well, I mean, I want to thank you for thinking about me to come on and have this conversation. These are important conversations to have, obviously. And it's nice to see that these are going on, that these conversations are happening. So it's definitely a changing world, not changing fast enough for the good. But again, like I said earlier, I'm optimistic. I think there are enough good people in the world that are kind of, as long as they kind of start to stand up and participate. You know, I will say one of the things that came up with, you know, with all the protests going on, you know, my daughter was like, I'd like to go to the protests. And I said, you know what, I'd like to go to them as well. But with COVID, it wasn't one of those, I want to put ourselves in that position. And I kind of I feel bad about that, because I'm going, well, I should, there's all these other people going out there and they're throwing caution to the wind, as, you know, as they probably should. And I applaud them.
Yeah.
You know, so it's, but at the same time, I think that the movement has picked up so much more, I think, because of the pandemic, because it's allowed people, you know, not that it's the best thing, but people that are working from home or people that are now out of work, they have the time to put into this. And it's not just a weekend thing. You know, they don't have to say, well, it's Monday, I got to go back to work. It's, you know what, I don't have a job right now, and now I can push through this. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
There's some bad things coming out of it with, you know, with the rioters and then again, leadership trying to divert the attention. But I think it's a good thing for the world, and I hope it continues. And I'm going to continue to be optimistic that there's going to be the good people will eventually overcome at some point. Again, not in our lifetime, but, you know, hopefully at some point.
Let me give you one perspective on the rioting. And imagine the fire department has been called because the house is on fire. Mm-hmm. You know, if they start putting water on the houses that are not on fire, mm-hmm. and the house that's on fire burns to the ground, you know, like, that's my all lives matter analogy. But the problem is, if I have a problem, if I had an IT problem, and I call Jim and say, hey Jim, I'm having this problem. Every time you tell me, Rochelle, you're just so damn stupid. I don't understand why you don't understand. It's simply this. And I call you back, Jim, I need help. Help me figure this out. Rochelle, I've already told you this 3 or 4 times. You are just really stupid. My next thing is to respond in kind. Mm-hmm. So the mm-hmm. people that are rioting and looting, I don't think it's a good thing at all, but I understand why, because they're trying to get people's attention. Yep. Pay attention to what I'm doing. So you care so much about this business. You care so much about the economic health of our world. Let me show you how little it matters to me. And when they burn it down in their own neighborhoods, which just seems even more insane to me, but what do I know? But they're just trying to get someone's attention. You know, please pay attention to this issue, you know. And so when you go back to Rodney King, you know, it was a black man who saved Reginald Denny's life, not a police officer or whatever. So I think what you said is absolutely right. There are some good things that are out there. The question just is can we manifest them in a way that actually turns out to positive results? You know, I mean, like that results in a world that your children will grow up and it won't make any difference what they look like. It won't make any difference what kind of hair they have or whatever they do. They will just be human beings, and we will all love them for their characteristics. Right. You know, so I hope. Yeah, I hope so. As long as we can get some new, younger leadership out there, I think that would make a huge difference. So yeah, I do too. So I'm going to end this when it finishes converting. I'm going to send you a link to it so you can look at it, see if there's anything you want us to take out, or if I can upload it, you'll let me know. Okay, yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much for doing this with me, Jim. Stay safe. All right, thanks for thinking of me. Okay, bye. All right, take care. Bye.